Welcome to the Northeast Kingdom Voice. I'm your host, Scott Wheeler. When you think of education, you typically think of public school, but Newport is privileged to have another educational facility, United Christian Academy. Today's guest is that school's headmaster, Lauren Carpenter. Welcome to the show. Did I get your title correct?
Well, yeah, Lauren Carpenter is fine. You know, they call me Rev at school, but
Right.
that's okay.
No, but are you the headmaster?
I'm the head of school, which is really the same thing as a headmaster.
Right.
Yeah.
So how long have you been at the school?
I've been there since July. I came in and sort of got oriented the first month and met all the staff and the faculty, had meetings, and have gotten to know the community a little better. And we'll be there until I'm the interim head of school, so that means I'm there until they find somebody, but they've just started the search. So we'll have a sort of a crossover in the process.
Oh, so you're the interim, but have you put your name in to be the full-time?
I'm technically old enough to retire at this point, and so I'm not sure my mother would have liked that since I have to take care of her. She's 90, and I'm not sure I could permanently move away from her at this point. She's in southern New England.
Right,
so,
okay.
Yeah.
So how have you enjoyed your time at UCA
I'm having
so
a
far?
ball. I think these are a phenomenal group of people that are doing more than I've ever seen faculty do in terms of making sure these students excel to the best of their ability.
Right. Now, do you know a bit of the history of that building? It's been a school for generations. It used to be Newport High.
We've had grandparents come to Grandparents' Day and say, I'm here not just because my grandchild is here, but I went to this school and graduated from here, and I love to see it keep going as a school.
Right.
Yeah.
My father graduated from there, and so when my daughter went to UCA for 2 years during the junior high years, he was able to say the same thing.
Right.
And then the elementary school was located across the road where your parking lot is.
Oh, that's what there was there. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So where do you come from? Are you from rural America, or are you a city boy?
Yes and yes. I grew up in a suburban community in Rhode Island, but at the same time I have served 3 parishes in rural communities. My first church was actually in the Adirondacks, in a little town called Hague. And so I have a heart for that, and then I've also served in the inner city. My most recent experience has been running mission organizations that are both, at first it was the North American Mission Organization, and then I ended up being General Secretary of an international missions group.
Right. So you arrived here in July last year, and what are the strengths of your school?
I think the strengths are its smallness, believe it or not. You know, I can't imagine teaching a class of 25, 30 kindergartners or fourth graders. It doesn't make any sense to me, but it is the reality of economics. And, you know, we have class sizes of 6, 8, 10, and so almost every child gets the teacher's attention and gets the individual attention that they need. And we have teachers that spend hours after school doing things with the students. They connect with the parents on a regular basis. So we have a partnership in terms of the educational process. Right. And that continues right up through the older students in high school, because they're getting some individual attention because we have as many classes as they need to get the curriculum that they need.
Right. Now, the one thing I found interesting about your school when my daughter went there was the diversity of it. Is people, you know, one thing I've heard people say out in the community, well, there's no diversity. Well, no, that's polar opposite. There's generally a lack of diversity in public schools, but in your school there truly is diversity. You have some students that come from around the world.
We do, and I think it depends on how you frame the term diversity. You know, we started as one of the most unique schools in the country, and it's still that way. We were a diverse population of Christians because we were started by Catholics and Protestants together. There's no other school in the country that does that. Then we added the international dimension, so that now we've had students from 10 different countries attend our school. Currently it's Korea and China. And so they add a whole different dimension as they come about their culture. And they come here to get an English education. They need to learn English by the time they're done so that they can go on to a college.
Right. Yeah. that my daughter, even though she hasn't, she's been out of college now for a few years, well, 2, 3 years, but she still stays in contact with one or two of the foreign students that she went to school with in 7th and 8th grade.
Sure.
And she's maintained those relationships, those international relationships. So I think that's an outstanding thing. And she talks about how some of the students arrive at UCA speaking very little English sometimes.
That's right.
And by the time they leave, they might not be totally fluent, but they have it pretty well down, and they've gotten a good education at the same time.
That's right. And in order to get into a college in America, they would have to take a test in their senior year and get a certain percentage, and it really focuses on English proficiency.
Right.
So they get that by living here for 4 years, 5 years within families, being totally immersed in our culture and our education process. They go home in the summer and sometimes during vacations. But it's a blessing to them, and for us, it's just wonderful to see the world in a different perspective.
And I know one of your students, former students, and I am having an old age moment. One of the Shattuck sisters, she not only, she embraced this whole culture thing at UCA, and she went on and she travels the world now, educating people in other regions of the world that some of us maybe will probably never go to.
Now, it's interesting. That's one student I haven't heard about, so I'll have to find out more. But we do have people. We have our first graduate is now headed into the mission field, and his family is going with him. We have graduates who are doctors and lawyers all over the world, and some of them are English when they start, some of them aren't.
Right.
So it's a wonderful breadth of culture we get.
How do you think the school has done about community outreach? Yeah, because I know you're here because you're trying to, you're trying to make sure you're known.
Right.
When did the school begin? I can't.
The school began 20 years ago in 1996.
Well, that's amazing to think. Because when you think of some of these things, I remember it happening. 20 years really has been that long. It's kind of like going to a parade and wondering why those cars you grew up with are in the antique section.
Okay.
Because time just goes like that.
It does go fast, doesn't it?
So 20 years. So how do you think they're doing about reaching out?
Well, I think that's been one of the intentional things in the last couple of years, and it was part of the discussion with the board when I came. They had really sort of been forgotten in the community for a lot of years and didn't take some intentional steps to reach out and let people know about us. And the reality is it's the best kept secret in the Northeast Kingdom because the education we provide, the care and attention we provide to students to allow them to excel, we've just not spent the time telling people. We're just doing it.
Right.
And now it's time to tell the world that we're alive and well, and we're not. As somebody said one time, I hesitated to come here because I thought you were one of those rich prep schools that you had to have a lot of money to be able to come.
Right.
And the reality is, yes, you need to pay tuition, we need to pay salaries of teachers, but we also go out and do a lot of fundraising to get financial support for those that can't afford it. Because the goal of the founders was to make sure anybody that wanted a quality Christian academic education, they could come here. And it makes it hard because we have to do fundraising, but that's part of a nonprofit experience.
Right. So you've been reaching out. I know Reverend or Pastor Barker, the Barkers, both of them are reverends. They've contacted me and said, "Hey, why don't you invite our headmaster onto your show?" And that's how we
Sure.
connected. And so what are some of the things that you're doing in the community, as in not you, but your students?
Well, part of our requirement for graduation is service work, and so we have students that are volunteering in the hospital. In the fall, we have a community service day in which we just suspend school for the day, and they all go out into various places to do work within the community for anybody that needs help. And so we sort of build that into the fabric of the life of the student body. For a senior or for anybody in the high school, they have to do 30 hours of community service, and they have to document it to us by either the person they helped or the organization they helped.
Right.
So it becomes part of their life. They need to give too. The other thing we did this year, which was very unique, is we had our first block party. And the goal was really to have an outdoor event, have rides and games and also times for the family to just drop by, had a concert in the evening. But the intent was to have it outside on our block, because it's a dead end anyway,
Right.
and invite the entire community. So people walking up and down Main Street came down and talked to us. And we basically just wanted to say to the neighborhood, we're here and want to be part of the neighborhood.
I think that's a really good idea, because I think sometimes, whether it's Christian schools or churches, sometimes, because you don't have to preach, because I think sometimes the people who preach the most are often trying to convince themselves of something, but and you're actually scaring people away occasionally. But I think sometimes being who you are, as a church, as a school, it's like, for example, I was up, one of my sons, his in-laws live at the end of the world. If you went any further, you'd probably fall off Fort Kent, Maine.
Oh, Maine, yeah.
And I was up there, and they have big dog sled races up there. And a church was going around, and they were going around with hot chocolate, a big drum of hot chocolate, and they were giving it out to everybody free, and they weren't preaching or anything, but they just put their church name on the cup. And I think sometimes that community outreach really does a lot of good.
Well, and we're not here to preach it to anybody.
Right.
We're here to live it.
Right.
And so we try to build into the fabric of the school, whether it be discipline issues or lifestyle issues. We're trying to let these young people learn what it means to be living the character of Christ.
Right.
And so we're not going to hammer anybody over the head, but we certainly know that when they come, they're going to experience the
Right.
love of God in a very unique way.
Right.
Somebody asked me one time about discipline issues, and they were talking about things like bullying and things that are part of life nowadays in many areas. And I said, well, we haven't really had that issue. And part of it is we don't have some major rule about bullying. That's not the issue. What we do is teach love and compassion and respect to one another. And when that's built into the fabric of a classroom or anything that a teacher does, it's modeled by how we relate to each other,
Right.
then the kids don't have any questions about it. Because as soon as they start that kind of a thing, we nip it in the bud and say, excuse me, but that's not the character that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
And I'd rather teach it positively than to somehow have so many rules that they can't breathe.
Oh, and I agree, because rules are all well and fine, but I think we've become, we've had so many rules put into place. Hey, how does your attitude how do you interconnect with public schools? Because you're both educational. One's public, one's private. Have you reached out to them in any way yet?
I haven't had the time, to be very honest. I'd love to do that and get an understanding of how we can dovetail. We do allow the athletic exchanges in a sense that one of our students this year is on the track team. She was on the cross-country ski team.
Well, the school superintendent, John Castle, is his father was the late Reverend Castle.
Right.
He was an Episcopalian minister, so he understands religion himself. So I would imagine he would be very receptive to meeting with you.
Yeah, no, and it'd be wonderful to do that. Part of my role as an interim, though, is not necessarily to build all of the contacts so they rely on me. I'd rather have them really get to know some of the folks in the school, which he probably does. Most of our teachers have been here 10 plus years, and I'm sure they've grown up in the area, know him well. But I'd love to sit down and talk with him, but it's a matter of time.
Right. Your teachers, they work there because they want to get rich. Is that?
Of course, yeah. Every
No,
one of them,
I will
Yeah.
say, I say that tongue in cheek, because I know if you want to work at UCA, it has to be really a passion and a mission.
Right. That's right. Yeah, I mean, our staff have the passion. They're excited about what they're doing, but they aren't there for the money.
Right.
And the reality is, we have to charge tuition, but it certainly doesn't cover what is considered nowadays an adequate salary.
Right.
But they are still at it. They're dedicated Christians who see this as a mission.
Right.
They don't see this as a job. And
Right.
I think that's the value of how they approach it.
And I can think of like Jim Smith is still there, correct?
He certainly
Yeah,
is. Yes,
he's
he
a
is.
North Country boy. He was,
Yeah.
I don't know if he was there when they opened, but he
Soon
probably,
after.
probably
soon
pretty
after,
close.
yeah.
And then
Yeah.
Carol Ann Barker also
Right.
teaches there. Then her son Jonathan, I believe he still teaches.
He's teaching there now. Yeah.
So I know
Yeah.
I know a few of them.
Yeah, and Deb Partridge is still teaching and has been there quite a while.
Right.
Interestingly enough, we have 3 who are former students who graduated, and now they're back teaching. So it really is. I think what happens is when people become part of the UCA community, it becomes part of the family.
Right.
And so the whole atmosphere in the building from the day you walk in is really a family atmosphere.
But so then if it's a family atmosphere, are you also welcoming to new people who are coming in?
Of course we are,
Right.
yes. And matter of fact, we have 2 more visit days where we just say anybody that wants to come in and visit the school and get a tour, sit in on a classroom, we encourage that.
When are those days?
The Visit UCA days that we have scheduled in the next couple of weeks are May 31st and June 6th.
Right.
And they literally, if they give us a call, then we can get ready for them, but if they don't, they can just walk in. And we make them feel at home. They get a chance to see what the school is like. If the students are in an exam or something, we can let them sit in on a class, or we can arrange to do that at another time.
And what is the school's number?
The school's number is 334-3112.
Right. And how about if those days don't work for people, are you able to accommodate people on
They
other
can
days?
just give us a call. We'll,
Right.
we'll work it into the schedule.
Right.
Especially at this time of year, even though we've set those 2 days aside, the hazard always is they get here, let's say on Friday, and we find out the kids are all gone on a field trip somewhere. So we want to make sure they call at this time of year because there's so many activities in the school.
Right.
Then we at least can steer them to a day when there are students around.
Now you touched on one thing. You mentioned that there's students who are actually taking part in activities at the high school as well.
Right.
If you want, so students are able to do that because UCA can't be everything to everybody, especially when it comes to sports. But
Right.
if you want to be on the track team at North Country, you can be on the track team.
That's my understanding. We've had an agreement. Our athletic director sort of connects with their athletic director and we work it out.
Right.
We have actually one student who is taking German 3, I believe it is, and of course we don't have access to that. And so she literally goes to a German class at North Country in the morning and then comes over and finishes the rest of the day with us.
Right. There was, through a tragedy though, there became a relationship between students though when Eli Goss was killed a few years ago
Right.
in a traffic accident. Well, he himself had kind of bridged a gap that sometimes exists between private school and public school, and he just was kind of like, he kind of moved about, and I think even through his death, he formed a relationship between North Country and UCA to a degree.
Yeah, that's my understanding. I was not here, but people have talked about that experience and said even the memorial service, basically 50 North Country students came over to be a part of that, and because he had known them.
Right.
And so he was certainly known in both worlds, you might say.
Yeah. And you probably, you probably expect that. You don't want to totally shelter the people.
No, I mean, my perspective on anything is that we don't shelter ourselves from the world. We're part of the world.
Right.
God loves the world. He doesn't just love certain people here.
Right.
And so we want to be part of the community in a way that is positive and supportive, and yet also be true to our faith and our beliefs. Yeah.
So we have about 8 more minutes left. What
Okay.
more would you like to tell the community about the school?
Well, I think one of the things that we always struggle with, and this is especially true of any private school, is the kindergarten, first grade age group. Because, in the public school, they automatically go to kindergarten. That's not even an issue.
Right.
But for us, we're out always trying to convince parents that we actually offer something different in terms of the care and the concern and the compassion and the building in of discipline and love into a kindergarten student. Because we have a wonderful teacher who's been there 12 years, and she is able to really bring the best out of, and I give two examples. One example is a couple of them that came in this year and hardly said a word. I mean, they were so shy. And by the time they were done this year, I mean, they're running around smiling and jumping and laughing like a normal kid. And it was just fun to see the growth in that. But at the same time, in the same class, she had a couple of students that are a little more active, you might say, and a little more of a challenge. But she's able to spend the attention with them because of the small class and bring out a little bit of discipline in their case where they can actually stand in a line now without fidgeting and hitting kids in front of them. Right. So we're able to really bridge that gap of the students who are shy but at the same time who are not shy, right, and bring them together in a way that they can really discipline themselves for the rest of their school year. And it helps because by the time they're in upper school, they've got the pattern of behavior down pretty well.
Now, elementary school, aren't those classes are usually have more students in them versus the upper, don't you have more students in your elementary school versus the high school?
Yeah, we started as a high school only and then added the elementary. But at least for the last couple of years, we now have more elementary than we do high school.
Right.
And part of that is I think people think about the opportunities of extracurricular things that are going on in the high school. But my personal experience, and I've had kids that went through the normal public school process, my own 3 children, mm-hmm, and you know, they played hockey and they played all sorts of things, but the reality was in their particular school, they weren't going to make college scholarship level things. They weren't going to go to a Division I school. And so I look back now, and the extracurricular was not the important thing they learned. It was the academics and the character building and the mentors that they had. Right. We offer that. The public school has some wonderful teachers that offer that. But if a person's only looking at the extracurricular, I think they're limiting the future of a child. What
about in the high school with because you know, just for high school or the world to keep up with the technology, the ever-changing technology, is UCA able to keep up to the technology, or do you?
We have so far, and maybe the best example is we've had 3 Rensselaer Merit Scholarships in the last 10 years, and so. Matter of fact, one of our juniors is going to have that for as soon as he gets through school here. He'll be going, if he chooses, to go to Rensselaer, all expenses paid. And it's because we, technologically, because of our computer lab and our math curriculum, they excel in that. And of course, kids pick up computers faster than I do anyway.
Oh, no, that's true. when I served in the Vermont House, if we had, you know, if we had something go wrong, whether it was just a DVD player or a computer, and the IT people were too busy, we would snag one of the 8th grade pages who were down there for a few weeks to deliver messages, and we'd say, "Hey, come over here." And
they figure it out, wouldn't
they? They could about 98% of the time they could just get it going, because that's the youth of today. A lot of people really, you know, every generation loves to look at the coming generations as, oh, you know, they're not going to amount to anything. I think today's young people are actually very bright.
Yeah.
And that technology thing used in the right hands is wonderful.
And we spend a lot of time teaching them not just the technology part of it, but how to use it effectively and not be consumed by it. Because part of the struggle is, you know, we become so tech-oriented that you can't even talk to anybody without them looking at their phone or their tablet or something.
That's a true story.
And the reality is we really very kindly and gently help them to learn how do you deal with technology so it doesn't run you.
And if the teachers are honest, they're probably going to say, because we know how it, because even we as adults, it's tough to find that balance.
Right.
You know, because I'm in business, I always use that for an excuse to always have my phone with me. But you know what? I I lived without a phone before.
But nowadays we think if it rings we have to answer, and the reality is we don't. No. And we can talk to people and relate to them. And so we encourage that in our classes and everywhere else.
Right.
The goal is we want to use technology, not be used by it.
No, that's it. So is there any timeline about getting a new headmaster?
Yeah, we hope by the first of the year at this point. We just started the search. The profiles are, if they're not on the website, they will be so that people can look. I have resources of individuals and mission agencies all over the country that I'm sort of sending them out to. So we're really looking broadly, and there may be somebody local, there may be somebody out in the world. We don't know.
Yeah, it'd be kind of, you know what I find with a lot of, either in my former hospital world or just, any other parts of my life is the people who seem to come here and stay here are the people who have a background in country living, and they're typically New Englanders or the greater region where they can, maintain a good base with their family.
Right.
Because if you get too far away, like Derby just lost, I think, an outstanding minister. He's been on my show. Is Pastor Josh Commies, who has decided to go back into the military and become a chaplain. And but he moved up here from Louisiana, and he gave it a try, and then he rejoined the military.
Yeah. Well, every region has its different culture, and I can remember one of the largest churches down in Boston who called a minister from Dallas, Texas.
Right.
And he lasted about 2 years, and then he said, I've got to go back to family, and I've got to go back to people I understand. And it had nothing to do with language.
Oh, I know.
We all have our unique ways of life.
Oh, yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Okay, well, 30 seconds.
30 seconds. I think the best thing that people can understand is come and see us. We'd love to host people, to let them see that we are really wanting to be part of the community, and we have something to offer.
And again, your phone number is?
334-3112.
Okay. Thank you for coming on the show.
Okay, you're welcome.
And thank you for tuning in to another segment of the Northeast Kingdom Voice.